here with reaction to my open and all the developments this week with the release of the Mueller report. President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, who joins me now and who no doubt is exhausted. Good evening, Mr. Giuliani. How are you? Mr. Mayor?
How are you, Judge? It's great to see you.
It's good to have you on. Listen, I gotta stick with one thing because we're both lawyers here. Have you ever in your lifetime heard a prosecutor say, we're not going to indict, but I can't exonerate the guy either? Have you ever heard that one?
Well, I was sitting there locked away in the Justice Department SCIF, which is where we read the report on last Tuesday. It's on the second page of Volume 2. I started with Volume 2. I looked at it, and I don't want to tell you what I said. I can't repeat it. And I had my three co-counsel with me, Jay Sekulow and Jane and Marty Raskin.
Yep.
And we all said, well, this is going to be a totally illegitimate document. Yep. This is a ridiculous burden of proof. You got to prove your innocence? I thought we were in America, or maybe England, even Rome. I mean, you go back 2,000 years.
Right.
So, but, you know, I was glad they did that because they proved in that one sentence that the idea that this is a witch hunt is absolutely right.
Right.
I mean, when has any human being ever been required to prove their innocence? How can you prove a negative?
You cannot.
It also means they assumed him guilty. And if you read that report, that's like a one-sided view as if they proved all that stuff.
Right.
They didn't prove any of it, Judge. And they can't prove half of it. And half of it is false, like a lie. Everything in that Cohen section, you could burn it.
Interesting.
Is there anybody that believes Michael Cohen? And would he even get past, 10 minutes of cross-examination? They'd have to take him off the witness stand.
Well, but it is their standard. If you've got a Brett Kavanaugh before the Senate, he's presumed guilty. If you're a Republican, you're presumed guilty. The presumption of innocence doesn't apply, and everybody needs to be believed but you. And that is a sad commentary. And I have to tell you, Mr. Mayor, I think Americans are looking at that. But I want to keep moving. Now, Jerry Nadler, we both know, has been a longtime hater of the president from their New York days. Now he wants a copy of the unredacted court, a copy of the... I mean, this grand jury minutes for starters. What makes him think that he's entitled to it? And number two, what's he going to do with it?
Well, first of all, as far as I'm concerned, he can have it, but I'm not the Attorney General, and the Attorney General can't break the law just for Jerry Nadler. This is the same Jerry Nadler who fought like a maniac against, the Clinton report coming out because it'd be so unfair to the president.
Right.
But, unfair to President Trump doesn't matter. The reality is there's nothing in that redacted material that's any different than you already have read. If you look at the two volumes, the redactions all take place under the collusion one because it involves national security, I imagine. Basically, in the obstruction one, out of 200 pages, there's no more than 2 pages redacted, and they're mostly footnotes. I bet Jerry doesn't read footnotes.
Yeah, well, the amazing part is, the categories are clear of exemptions. They're mandated. Bill Barr isn't doing this. It's grand jury material, sources and methods, pending cases, privacy of third parties. We're not making that stuff up, so I don't know what their problem is on that one. But what do you think he's going to do with this stuff? In the end, what is...
what he has?
Yeah, what's he going to do with it? Yeah.
Well, the one thing that is clear is, and they make it clear in their report, they didn't any of these things, they didn't find enough evidence in order to justify a charge.
Right.
They say, and right at the beginning they say, we can't conclude that the president, we can't conclude, there's not enough evidence sufficient to show that the president committed a crime. Right. Of course, that, as you know, is the end of it, right?
It's over now. Any prosecutor knows that.
You don't say anything else. The rules of ethics say you keep quiet for a very good reason. You're hitting somebody who can't hit back.
Right, right. And to prove a negative.
You can't test, like I could point to all sorts of things about Michael Cohen that should have been pointed out, that he's lying about. Some of it they know and they're withholding. So this was a very unfair thing to do. Having done it, it's a yawner. I mean, you just look at it and you say, I got through it, and I looked at it and I said to my co-counsel, There's nothing new here. We're fine.
Yeah. Well, look.
I mean, the only thing that makes it a little deceptive, they put all the garbage in one place.
Yeah. Well, they did, and they categorized it for us. But you know, the interesting thing is that now they're going after Bill Barr. No surprise, they hate anybody who is in favor of the rules that are supposed to apply. Now, Attorney General Barr is not legally required to even release the full Mueller report. The report is written to be given to the Attorney General. And all of a sudden, everybody is criticizing him when he did everything he could to do the summary, to do the required redactions, and they are still gunning for him.
Well, I can't understand it, and I think nobody believes it. If you just look at Bill Barr and you listen to him and you look at his background, this looks like completely phony political garbage. I mean, somebody on there, I don't know if it was Nadler or somebody else, called him a political hack. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The guy has been a distinguished lawyer, a former attorney general. He got confirmed unanimously when Bush nominated him. Should have been confirmed unanimously now.
I mean,
nobody had a problem with him.
Yeah, it was like 93-7 or something crazy
okay,
like that.
So pretty close to unanimous.
Yeah.
And you know him, I know him. He's a very distinguished member of the bar.
Definitely.
He is not going to put his reputation in jeopardy to do anything dishonest or sneaky. And every single thing he said is, if this weren't President Trump and all these media people who hate him, he'd be getting praise today for having restored a sense of law, justice, and sanity to what had become a media circus.
Yes, indeed. Rudy Giuliani, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Judge. You're always the best.
Thank you.
The special counsel made clear that he did not exonerate the president, and the responsibility now falls to Congress to hold the president accountable for his actions. Congress must get the full unredacted report along with the underlying evidence uncovered by special counsel Mueller. Congress requires this material in order to perform our constitutionally mandated responsibilities.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler just hours after the release of the redacted special counsel report. On Friday morning, he issued a subpoena for the full unredacted version. It requests that Attorney General Barr turn over the documents by May 1st at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That could spark a lengthy court battle. We're joined by former Department of Justice Attorney James Trusty. Welcome back. Nice to see you again.
Sure, you too, Paul.
So let's take it, the criticism first about William Barr, because he summarized some of the report, and a lot of critics say that was just not kosher. Do you think that's fair criticism?
Yeah, in this case, I really don't think it is. I mean, Barr did not say that it was a flat-out, across-the-board acquittal for the president. He did acknowledge there was some vagary to the obstruction part of the analysis. And it was a 4-page summary of a 483-page document. So you can always parse and say, why did he leave this out? Why did he leave that out? I think Barr is still the credible guy that got him the job in the first place, and I think it's a fairly premeditated but unfair attack on him to say that somehow he tried to mislead the public during that 3-week period.
Now, you've looked at the redactions, as we all have. There's a fair number of them, but it's you can read most of the report without them. Do you think the redactions and their justification look okay to you? Does that look like they're reasonable?
Well, look, the bottom line is all of the bases for redactions here are ones that pre-existed this investigation. I mean, it absolutely makes sense that grand jury material, which statutorily has to be secret unless a judge orders release, you knew there was going to be grand jury redactions in here. You knew there was a very solid chance of ongoing matters creating redactions. And I'd say also classified or foreign intelligence gathering type techniques. I mean, these are traditional areas that you don't want to publicize, so it's no surprise that there was at least some portion of the reports redacted. Now,
Barr said that he's going to allow senior members of Congress and the key committees to come in and take a look at all the redacted material except for the grand jury material. That sounds like a pretty major accommodation to Congress.
That is. It's funny. It's kind of a heavy-handed approach to say, give me everything by May 1st, here's a subpoena, when Barr seems to be true to his word from the beginning. I mean, in the confirmation hearings, he was talking about full disclosure to the best he could under the law. This is a pretty traditional and sensical type of conciliation to say, look, we'll meet in a skiff, we'll meet under secure circumstances so you can look at things that aren't properly before the general public. The Rule 6e, the grand jury material part, it doesn't matter who's asking. That requires a judge. And so somebody has to go to a judge and convince a judge that this type of disclosure, which is very unlike typical litigation disclosures, makes sense. And
Nadler's suggesting he's going to do exactly that and demand of Barr turning over the full report and accompanying materials. Now, if Barr says, well, wait a minute, I've given you everything except 6E, which only a judge can turn over, and I'm going to resist your subpoena because of that, how's that legal fight going to turn out?
Great question, and who knows? But I would say it's going to be a little uphill. I mean, again, when you have
for the Congress, you mean uphill for the
Congress?
Yeah.
Sorry, yes. I mean, for Rule 6e materials, it's typically because a defendant's rights are involved. In other words, I'm representing a client. There's a trial going on. The witness that's going to take the witness stand previously testified in the grand jury. I'm entitled to see if there's inconsistencies between those statements. That's the type of thing you see very routine release of Rule 6e materials, but not just Congress really wants to know. And the reality is, remember, the report didn't actually have to even go to the public or Congress.
Right.
It was supposed to be going to the Attorney General. They made a political and I think a correct calculation that they couldn't sit on it and keep it from public scrutiny.
And that ought to be something in the Justice Department's favor if it resists. I assume this, though, would go up multiple rungs, and who knows, it could even go up to the Supreme Court.
It could. I mean, obviously, if it gets to a point where a court says under all of these circumstances we're going to allow essentially qualified release to Congress, maybe treating it like classified information, then that could end it without a bunch of appeals by DOJ. But if DOJ is saying no and the courts are agreeing, it could take a while to resolve that.
We have about a minute left, but I want to ask you about the obstruction section of the report, and particularly the line by the special counsel that he said, though we did not find that the president committed any crime of obstruction of justice, we did not conclude that he was enough to exonerate him. Is that playing fair, do you think, by the special counsel, to leave that cloud over the White House?
Yeah, that's a tough question because, you know, you could certainly envision a report, probably very stripped down from what we have here, that just literally gives the emperor's thumbs up or thumbs down on prosecution using a reasonable likelihood of conviction standard. In other words, do we have enough proof beyond a reasonable doubt? So you could have a situation where they just said there's not enough to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt as to both aspects. So each side of the analysis is a little different. To say not only is there not enough to prosecute, but there was no collusion is going beyond what some people had called for in terms of the prosecutorial model, but also leaving dirt on the table and saying it's not enough is problematic. It makes people have to defend their own or prove their own innocence when they shouldn't have to. So it's a tough call.
All right. Thank you, James Trusty. Appreciate it.